let me ask you a question. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you could, quite literally, buy more time? Maybe you'd add an extra hour to your daily routine to sleep in. Or maybe you'd consider buying a few hours to cash in for an emergency. Perhaps instead you'd take the chance to sell your time for some extra walking around money. Or if you're one of the sharper folks, you could start a time bank and store people's time, allowing it to collect interest. All that I can say for certain is that the possibilities are nigh endless. But it also leads to one very tantalizing question. What would happen if instead of money, we traded in time? Well, have I got the perfect place for you? Welcome, welcome, welcome to the most profoundly soul-crushing city in fiction to date. Asterisk. District 20 is a terribly fascinating metropolis that is chock full of engineering exceptionalism and promise. And of course, its entire economy works based off of time. But don't let it twist your tea too much. This ain't some heartless dystopia that kills you when you run out of money like those amateurs in 2011's In Time. 4 minutes for a cup of coffee? Wowza! Great tagline. No. You won't die. Instead, District 20 specializes in making the perfect place for making you wish you were dead. And a lot of it is staggeringly British. Go figure. Between taking color away from the general population, normalizing people having 4-hour days instead of 24, tracking your every expense and movement, and somehow still becoming the engineering capital of the entire world, this place is downright insidious. And with this being the second most referenced wing in the franchise it exists in, it's just begging to be dissected and discussed with all the love a man-made torture berg deserves. Tain't no easy task, but I'm sure it'll be worth it. Right? So, if you can afford a moment, allow me to guide you through the timely tragedy that is District 20 and T-Corp. Or as I like to call it, the most predatory city in fiction. As always, let's start with the facts. District 20 here is one of the 25 known districts in the world of Project Moon. Every district is run by a megacorporation called a wing that controls a revolutionary piece of technology called a singularity. And it just so happens that District 20's wing, Time Track Corporation, T-Corp for short, has a singularity that allows them to collect and store time. Specifically, this stores the time collected from people. And to understand how T-Corp works, we'll need to get you up to speed on what collecting time is like. Let's say you're my cousin Big Gay Gary, and you're living your regular 24-hour day, and you choose to store 12 hours of that day in this box. Now that you've done it, your 12 hours will be stretched over those 24, causing you to move, think, act, and perceive the world half as fast. However, time stops for no one, so your body's needs will still act as normal. That means it's possible to get another 8 hours of sleep, but in doing this, you're now left to choose between spending 2/3 of your day in bed or going about the next full day without any sleep. This is how time works in Project Moon. It's quantifying a person's ability to be present over a period. When you gain or lose time over that period, you're not becoming inactive or dead for a part of the day, you're simply processing it at different constant speeds. From there, the collected time becomes a resource that fuels a variety of other technologies that are built on top of it. Sure, that stored 12 hours from yesterday could be used to give yourself a 36-hour day tomorrow, but time can also be used for small conveniences, like, say, a cooking pot. You boil meat in there for 10 seconds and it comes out as tender and rich as a stew that's been left for 3 days. Handy as hell, yeah? Then there's the more intense material. Time, if used with a technology meant to target your immune system, can be used to accelerate your body's ability to heal wounds. And with enough time, you could even fuel accelerated mass transit. In fact, that's exactly what they did, because soon enough, Time Track would have immensely powerful partnerships with 3 fellow wings. First off, there's W Corp, also known as the Warp Corp that owns their patented Warp Train. This allows anyone to go from one side of the continent to any other location in only 10 seconds. However, their singularity is more used for sanitation reasons. The train works with great assistance from T Corp and another wing named L Corp. All you really gotta know for now is that L Corp's an energy company, and those trains use a lot of it to get from point A to point B. But it's T Corp that allows that travel to be compressed into only 10 seconds through accelerating time. And despite the fact that Time Track doesn't get any money in this exchange, this is still their most lucrative partnership of the three. See, while the warp train needs only 10 seconds to operate, this doesn't mean that the experience takes 10 seconds. The tech gets kinda complex here, but in simple terms, W Corp will put the train into a pocket dimension where time is dilated. T Corp's technology then collects all of the time from the passengers within that dimension, which slows them down even more and makes them basically immortal. Look, don't ask how people don't need to eat or sleep in here while they need to out here. It's never explained, and I'm just assuming that's because of the portal. Either way, it's an eternity in there. Regardless, after 10 seconds pass on the outside, they return the passengers back to the original dimension and then set their time to Mach speed so that they can get to the new destination instantly. Now, if you want to know how that ride feels to the passengers, I got another video on that. But in short, Time Track basically mined so much time in that parallel space that making the train work this quickly barely makes a dent in their time profits. So every train ride means getting centuries of time back to T Corp. And there are many train rides that happen every day all across every district. But as the old adage goes, more time, more problems. Now that they've got an abundance of it, T Corp needs a way to protect it. And that is where your friendly neighborhood R Corp comes in. Replication Corp, aka R Corp, is a personal military company. Their singularity is a cloning technology capable of making an infinite number of super soldiers. And one day they had a nifty idea about how to make those fellas even stronger using something called the hatchery. If R Corp could take thousands of clones and place them in a bloody deathmatch with each other, good old Darwinism will let you allow only the strongest to live and become the new base clone. This way, the last survivor after every game would be stronger than the previous generation. Kinda like ascending on a roguelike. The only problem here is that the federal laws don't look kindly on clones. A base and their clone can coexist for about a week, but after that, either the clone or the dupe need to be kiboshed, lest the powers that be get involved. And these personal murder parties could take up to months to finish. Thankfully, T Corp generously allowed them to set up a facility that worked on accelerated time so that months could pass inside this space, while only days passed on the outside. And in return, R Corp agreed to protect Time Track's singularity at a moment's notice. So yeah, one wing gets a new Hunger Games sim, and the other now has all the resources and protection to invent without any fears. And this is what allowed T Corp to shoot for their next major goal. Time Track already knew how to affect the speed of time, but what if they could reverse it? Now, for accuracy's sake, T Corp was already capable of reversing time 11 years ago. But it wasn't something they could do so easily like with the warp train and the hatchery. They were only able to turn back time for a handful of people in a small area, and it was mostly there for party tricks. You know, like eating the same food twice, reliving a moment of joy, or making a man experience his own death for an eternity. Wait, what the fuck, did they actually do that? Oh, dear Christ, what in the Old Testament? Meanwhile, there was this scrappy new wing called Lobotomy Corporation, or L Corp, who was jonesing hard for making an endless time loop that could affect an entire facility of over 100 living entities at once. Turns out they were also up to something vaguely religious, so the two wings got along great. And as mentioned before, L Corp's specialty was being an energy company, which means that they could more easily fuel T Corp's research. Infinite time met with ample resources, and boom! The TT2 protocol was born. This baby can not only rewind over a month of time at once in a contained space, but can slow, pause, and fast forward it to boot. Now granted, the tech came with some side effects to those it was used on, like say, amnesia. But hey, it allowed 10 scientists to reenact 10,000 years of severance at once, so who am I to kink shame? More importantly, it set a precedent. Time Track had a massive flow of time coming in, the security to protect it, and greater control over a force nobody else had access to with every single invention. This means that wherever there was time, Time Track had power. And knowing this, T Corp centered every facet of life they could around it. So now, let's take our first proper look into the streets of District 20. And what better way to start than... Now, big disclaimer for this next part. As much as I love T Corp and Project Moon, this sepia-toned shithole's a giant hunk of Swiss cheese. There's more to chew on here than other locations, yes, but what's here is also full of holes. And while I'm someone who likes to read between the lines and make theories I'm willing to bet my reputation on whether they're right or wrong, T Corp's in this frustrating state where what's on display is so fascinating The mechanics of how and when this place works are so close to making sense, but just need like another intervalo's worth of context to not feel like half of the way these work are an asspull. So when I say I'm making inferences, just know it's with good reason. That all said, living in T Corp means that your life is chained in every way to time. And there's no better symbolic or literal example of this than the pocket watch. Every citizen of T Corp carries with them a personal pocket watch that acts both as their wallet and their identification. Since T Corp's primary currency is time, this means that these watches also allow the owner to budget how much time they have in their day. And while we don't have an exact breakdown of how this works, all signs point to the pocket watch having 3 internal accounts for time. Let's call those the savings account, the checking account, and the active account. The savings account's the simplest. Let's say that you get paid 900 hours at the start of the month. All of that immediately goes into your savings account. And just like a regular savings account, you can't spend from it directly. That money, or time in this case, needs to first be moved to one of the other two. And any time that's put in there can only be used the day afterward. For example's sake, let's say you move 20 hours into your active account and 10 hours into your checking account. The time that's in your active account is your daily budget of time and how you experience it. With 20 hours, you'll have a mostly normal experience when compared to anyone else outside of T Corp. But here's the funny thing. We've seen people be robbed of or otherwise relieved of their time in T Corp, but never voluntarily spend it. So there's little reason to believe that this account does anything but dictate how long your day is. Instead, it's the checking account that has the ability to make voluntary payments and to add time to your day on command. This is backed up by T Corp Rhodion's uptie story. In there, Rhodion acts as a time tax collector and uses her own time to accelerate herself before a fight. During this, the cutscene states, even the time rich can't immediately make use of the abundance of time they have within the same day. But if they've already readied and stored enough time the day before, they can accelerate themselves merely by touching their timepieces. In other words, your savings account is your time storage, your checking account is your walking around money, and your active account controls whether you're a brown blur or a sepia statue. Now, as you can imagine from that technobabble, this already means that you're having to actively manage more of your life day by day, just working out how long you'll be a sentient being for. But of course, there's a reason for that. The reason is to make sure nobody shows up 15 minutes late for a coffee meeting and talks like it means nothing, like, come on, literally you're having me waste my money. Since everyone's main means of spending time is connected to their ID, that makes it easy for T Corp to track anyone's purchase on command and even tell where their time is flowing to and from. They grow up so fast, don't they? Years ago, they were just learning to make instant beef stock, and now they're making an instant surveillance state. Damn if nature isn't beautiful, huh? Oh, and I guess I should also mention that there are time vaults meant for storing time safely, and that people can have vanity pocket watches. Hell, some folks even get a discretionary time budget from the company they work for to handle their expenses. And T Corp itself has its own dedicated time stream that its tax collectors pull from when handling the more difficult clients. Though if you're brave and tech-savvy enough, you could also try to siphon some time away from there with a custom-made pocket watch like these guys did in T Corp Otis's uptie story. Only issue here is that these slow saps didn't make their watches immune from having their own time collected. Speaking of collections, that leads us to the other consequence of making a time-based economy. If time's money, then time's also subject to taxation. That's just basic physics at work. As it turns out though, this is a major part of T Corp's structure. What do you want me to say? It's taxes. It should be pretty self-explanatory. As we all know, everyone that makes a certain amount of income with a higher rate for those under a certain tax than their new necessities such as sleep, transit, cleaning, or immigrant, you also have a higher tax bracket than a native born factored in. Can't always expect regular systems like God forbid you try to make your pink tire write-off. What the fuck are we doing here? Look. Can we take a quick sidebar, you and me? Listen, do you really want me to spend 5 minutes talking to you about how accounting works in a fake city and how time being money changes that? People talk about power systems, heartbreaking stories, fucking strategy and gameplay. I know that T Corp has a lot about it, but you're really sure you're here for something that's 50% fantasy taxes?
Yes.
Okay, point taken. That's egg on my face, I guess. So, fine. Here's your answer. time becoming money makes taxes worse! Because it makes everything worse! Yeah, everyone sure loves the idea of being able to have more hours in their day for their work, but the average T Corp citizen gets 20 to 28 hours per day, which, wouldn't you know, averages out to be the same. Oh, but any good statistician knows that the average doesn't mean shit if the median's too far off the mark. Too bad we don't get that info. But let's face it, it's a dystopian setting. Go down the line of the NPCs in T Corp and you'll get a handful of super rich gods beyond time obsessed with oral hygiene and a mob of people that get less than 16 hours per day. These guys right here have all the energy of a drunk college student after an all-nighter. Because guess what? They sleep as much as one. Yeah, funny thing about living on 6 to 12 hours a day, you learn pretty quick to choose between getting shut-eye and having a job. And damn, that's pretty fucked up, isn't it? I mean, yeesh. Imagine having these guys in a store. They'd move around only half as fast and clutter up the place, and you could tell at an instant that they wouldn't buy as much. Running that kind of business is basically playing human Tetris. Maybe that's why there's some upscale stores that have doors built specifically to open and shut rapidly so only the time rich are fast enough to pass. Oh, but don't worry. T-Corp's got this super humanitarian program. No matter how bad off you are, Time Track ensures that you have the right to at least 4 hours of time per day. That's what it likes to call the bare minimum needed to survive. And in case I need to lay out exactly why that's adorably pathetic, most welfare systems like this are put in place for people who aren't 100% broke so they can get back on their feet. They're not meant as a means to keep people alive when they have only nothing. Or less, unlike this one. Like, yeah, we could talk for hours or days about how a welfare system should operate. But let's all just agree that in here, debt's a fate worse than death? Because you're spending your entire life not thinking, but just doing. Running from one little task to the next despite your limited time catching up with you every month, every week, every day, every hour, every second. God! It's like the entire concept of this place was built on wishful thinking and some tech bros steampunk fantasy! Alright. I've had my fun. I've had my crash out, get that fucking timer out of my face. The point is, being poor sucks everywhere, but especially in T Corp. The forks are indeed in the kitchen. But it's not like the better off are exempt from their own timely struggles. And to illustrate that, let's talk about taxes for real now. What we know about T Corp taxes is pretty sparse, all considered. We know there are tax brackets based on income levels, and that the rates are higher for people that immigrate to T Corp. Oh, and also that there's a special clause for short-term stays. If you're just there for vacation or work, you can choose to preemptively pay a time tax using your own local currency, and not worry about getting a pocket watch or filling out the paperwork to manage all that. Credit where it's due, that part's pretty flexible. However, most of what we know about T Corp's taxes revolve around who enforces them. See, there's an entire industry of wing-owned collectors in District 20 ranked by classes. All of these staff at T Corp are ranked on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. This scale applies to anyone from clerical staff who run the paperwork, to inventors who don't even need to work for T Corp to have a class, and auditors who let people borrow their clothes, I guess. But the greatest faction we know of is T Corp's collectors, who are in charge of reclaiming time and technology from debtors and criminals. Funny thing is that there's an entire culture around them that we can see going up the chain. Now, we may not have seen exactly what a Class 1 collector looks like, but it's likely they're one step above clerks. They exist mainly as assistants to the more senior collectives as shown in T Corp Otis's Uptie story. While it's possible they could get into combat, it's just as likely they're acting as field intel support or maybe even the good cop before the bad cop comes in. But Class 2 collectors are where we know hands start to come up. They'll typically be cordial upon approaching someone, but are ready for things to go south all the same. And sometimes they're known to skim a bit of the reclaimed time off the top for their own coffers due to the pay not being great at this level. These guys also get a few tools from T Corp. First off, there's these special badges that allow the body to enter golden time, a useful tool in emergencies that detect when the collector's near death and allows their body to heal. T Corp collectors also get their own time budget to allow them to speed themselves up and think fast in combat. But that time has its limits, and they may put themselves into a borrowed time state where they risk rendering themselves motionless if they take too long to finish the job. But if a quick end isn't possible, they also have some ways to make use of a drawn-out fight. Interlocking time is their way of turning combat into even more accounting. They can turn time into a potential energy that makes their enemies take less damage from their attacks, but after being hit 3 times this way, all that pain comes back with 15% interest, which is perfect for a slugfest. But there's no beating around the most popular method of weaponizing time: Time Moratorium. It works like interlocking time by infusing the enemy with it and reducing their damage, but instead of pulling the punches a bit, the target feels nothing. And instead of needing to hit them a lot, the immunity goes away after a bit, bombarding them with 30% interest on the damage and bursting their tremor to put them further off balance. It can even be activated earlier for a slightly weaker effect just by slapping them with another moratorium. We've seen this in all 3 of the current T-Corp ID kits up to now, which goes to show that the best way to punish debtors is to give them even more time debt. Moving up the watch chain, we've got the most varied of the collectors in Class 3. Now these guys, they mean business. Despite having a fashion sense I can only call the leather android look, they've got all the benefits of the Class 2 staff and more. Squadrons of them will move in teams of suppression and neutralization units. The suppression units will work to weaken and even paralyze the target, while the neutralization units will use borrowed time to finish the job. Both types even get a fancy spin on the time moratorium that's less flexible, but hits all the harder. Task-wise though, they're not much different from Class 2. It's just a little more intense. Class 3 collectors will often act as team leads or combat specialists for the more high-profile cases, and even have the weaponry to match. For instance, the Class 3 collector Don Quixote has a time pickaxe that, when activated, actively collects time from those near it without even touching them. And that exoskeleton may make it look like a diseased tree, but it goes a long way to protecting your vitals. There's also a special class of collectors that were introduced at this stage called the Violent Defaulters Collections Unit, just for those slippery souls that want to get into time trafficking. Since it's very likely that time smugglers are going to, well, have special ways to soup themselves up with time, these guys are given more aggressive resources and even more time compared to the Class 2 and even regular Class 3 staff, based on how T-Corp Dawn and Otis talk about their budgets. And as much as I'd like to continue climbing that ladder, we don't have any fantastic examples of Class 4 or Class 5 staff. I mean, sure, there are Class 4 collector sprites which appear to be fit for managerial jobs, and a Class 5 auditor named Mai who audits, I guess, but I imagine they just get more complicated and impressive from there. That said, there's still more to dig into with the company culture. Now, taking a look at the different collectors, you may have noticed that all of them wear top hats of varying sizes. Now, I don't know who thought that was a smart idea. No, never mind, that checks out. But the hat size correlates with the employee's status. Not only is it a sign of prestige among collectors, but also a sign of trust. The thinking's that if a collector can keep their poise and do their duties while not losing their hat, they're more than worthy of their position. Something along those lines anyway. For all I'm able to glean though, that's treated more as a quirk of the office rather than a real incentive. But even among the T-Corp collectors, there's a major difference in how they view time. The Class 2s act like crooked cops that are trying to not overspend their limited budget by taking shakedowns. And the Class 3s, while more satisfied with T-Corp itself, still have a certain level of dread to their attitude. VDCU Otis is probably the most Stockholmed out of the 3s, since she could have anywhere from a 50 to a 72-hour day based on how long she makes her meals, but still acts like she can't afford to lose a single second. Seriously, these are just a few of her quotes and voice lines. Like, there's having a grind set, and then there's fearing time itself. I mean, even the most rich that live in T-Corp either talk about how dreadfully slow everything around them moves, or just seem to be beyond time in general, like the family at Wuthering Heights. It doesn't really seem like time's making their lives much better. And then there's T-Corp Don Quixote, who's the most well-adjusted of them all. Able to appreciate her lot in life while Roja can't, and still takes some joy in reaping time taxes from the well-off who can afford it, but are unwilling to pay it. So maybe there are some glimmers of light in the dim nights of the District 20 backstreets. Yes, the time system may exacerbate existing class issues in ways that are downright diabolical, and they spend absurd amounts of money simply on maintaining a tax collection agency. But outside of their district, the technology made by T-Corp has made the lives of countless people better through tools like the warp train. So if they're capable of improving the lives outside of their district, why don't we take a minute to look at what they've made to make Nest T itself a better place to live? Let's start with the best invention that T-Corp themselves have made for their own district. Remember the TT2 protocol? It was great for the 3 other wings they did business with, but it's effectively useless in District 20 itself. Or rather, it creates a new problem. See, a tool like the Hatchery or the Warp Train work well because everyone experiences time in the same way by default. But in T-Corp, you could have 10 people in the same room for a meeting or a party, and they could all be at different time speeds. Talking to strangers at a party can be stressful enough, but imagine having to have a discussion with someone for an hour where you can barely understand what the other person is saying. And the only way to fix it is to convince one of them to either cough up more time or get someone to voluntarily shorten their day. God forbid you have to settle that with 10 people at once. So rather than needing a TT2 protocol that would do nothing but speed them all up or slow them all down in the same space, T-Corp made the TT4 protocol. Instead of applying a multiplier to everyone's time, this baby sets them all to whatever speed you want. So no worries about a budget, just turn it on, have people enter its range, and everyone there gets 12, 24, 48, or however many hours you want. There's just one catch. This thing's expensive. Like, sure, setting everyone's time to the same rate on your own dime would get pricey, but the way it's talked about in Time-Killing Time, this sucker ain't even efficient and leaks out extra time, costing you more than if everyone just set their clocks to the same rate. It's so damn wasteful that we've only seen it be used by the walking, talking tuberculosis cases at Old Money Wuthering Heights. Hell, imagine if you tried to activate a TT4 from inside another TT4 and tried to make, like, a dozen or so people even faster by comparison. It'd cause an exponentially massive time leak that could bankrupt a large business. I can't really think of anyone who in their right mind would be careless enough to try. Dog, that's not a counter-argument, that's Exhibit A. But invention marches on as it's always done. That very inefficiency is what led to the invention of the TT5-2 protocol, which is a prototype of a new TT4 that tries to take care of the time leakage. Of course, that one is still being tested in T-Corp offices. And while we're at it, I may as well mention the temporal scale gallows, which is a quick and easy way people can voluntarily pay their time debts. It'll just give your neck a little hug, take some measurements, and suck the time right out of you, placing you into the 4-hour welfare class if need be. But I ain't here to play this game of listing one invention after another. T-Corp's the engineering capital of the world here. So of course it wants to attract talent from other districts and encourage excellence. Researchers, engineers, and inventors alike would seek out a better future, even paying the additional immigrant time tax and filling the paperwork to get access to the resources and incentives T-Corp has. Jobs in the industry are very abundant here, and with inventors having their own official classes like collectors, you could very quickly make a name for yourself at an expo. Everyone from the back streets to the nest, and even immigrants are welcome to submit whatever could push the progress of T-Corp forward. Why, you could even win anything from the Exceptional or Distinctive Awards to the coveted Inventor of the Year Award, which comes with a massive amount of prize money. All of this is the oh-so-alluring spectacle of being a respected T-Corp inventor. At least it is, if you file the proper paperwork. Time Track has put many years into making inventions that could better the world we live in, but unfortunately, not every group of inventors can be awarded with that trust. Take Theodivie, a socialist group of upstarts intending to play Robin Hood and take wealth from the rich and distribute it to the poor. They've gotten more active in every district as a whole as of late, but they have an especially easy time drawing in a following at T-Corp. These rabble have done everything from invent radio flares to gather their forces to a single location, to radio signals to make them move stronger, to hedgehog bombs. Yeah, they bombed the T-Corp company lobby. It was a whole mess. In any case, this is one of the very good reasons T-Corp made laws stating that private technological invention groups of 5 or more people, not registered as a business, require a permit from T-Corp. Following this also means registering everything you make to the Technology Administration Agency, which gives them the right to recreate and use the knowledge of it as they see fit. In other words, T-Corp's perfectly fine and dandy with people inventing anything from time bombs to portals to alternate universes, so long as they get every right to play with your toys too. For example, suppose you're a gloomy architect that wanted to design factories to easily monitor employees for safety issues. Well, I hope you like the taste of a monkey's finger in your mouth, cause its paw is curling. Now those factories are being used to check for slow-moving workers and keep production in order. And those ID tags made to reunite children with their parents? Well, those kids are already in the factories anyway. Why not use those gadgets to track that efficiency all the same? Ultimately, every inventor learns one oh-so-inconvenient truth. You can build to your heart's content in T-Corp, but only if you're willing to let that tech be used in ways you never intended. Save your mind, your body, and your time, but not your soul. Or, you could always try inventing under the radar. But if Time Track finds out you're up to anything, they'll just send the collectors your way. At best, they'd fine you a full workday's worth of hours per invention. And at worst, they'll track your every moment spent and take you away to who knows where. But either way, Big Papa Time Track's gonna get your little gadgets.
It's mine, 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 mine.
And that's the current state of T-Corp. It's a suffocating, unchanging Rube Goldberg machine of suffering that turns time into money, people into ceaseless tops spinning in place like gears, and talent into a devil's contract that ensures that any possible creation that could be used to better the lives of its citizens and dig them out of this glacially dreary inferno will instead be used to subjugate them further. It's an ever-evolving, artful shrine to pain that only our soon-to-be woman of the hour can properly appreciate. And the best part of it all is, none of this was on purpose.
Burn my house to the ground!
Take a look at this guy. Do you know who he is? Well, neither do I, but he's blocking the way of this fool. This is Herbert, the executive director and likely founder of Time Track. And let me throw this out to you right now, we don't have time to talk about him today. But this fella made a wish on a star hoping desperately for a way to get an extra hour, minute, or even second when he needed it most. And in true Disney fashion, it was granted and led to a domino effect that ended with him abusing patent law. But all these tech, taxes, and timely nonsense we've talked about, it's the project of a manic engineer that got so obsessed with time he accidentally invented marvels of technology and let them roam free until they caused consequences that now he is hopelessly trying to fix. It's an infinitely more boring Jurassic Park lesson. And Herbie here's even made it so he's immune from the effects of his own creation. Like, dude, did you really have to deprive everyone around you of color? Or, I'm sorry, color with a U and make them pay to buy it back? Oh my god, we haven't even talked about color. Oh my god, we haven't talked about color. Where do I even start with this? How about the obvious? Nearly everything and everyone you see in T-Corp is devoid of vibrant color. That's because colors are yielded to Time Track to anyone from the moment they entered the district, whether it's from the outside of its borders or straight out of the womb. Now there are some exceptions to this. People can pay money to reclaim the color of an article of clothing or a patch of land if they so choose. And there are even color-returning lamps that can partially return hues to whatever falls under their light, often used in restaurants to enhance the dining experience. But all of this raises several questions. The first two that come to mind for me are, number one, why? And two, the fuck? Because all signs here point to this being optional. T-Corp didn't have to turn color into a luxury good and make a racket inspired by a third-rate Paper Mario game. The phrase yielding colors is used intentionally and is always spoken of as if anything casting color is being returned. And I'm sure that all I need to do to prove that to you is to give you a full breakdown of how the color system works in T-Corp. So that's exactly what I'll do. If I had one! Oh, sweet merciful crow-flavored Jesus, I tried! I fucking tried to make sense of how T-Corp controls colors, but Project Moon gave me nothing to work with! Sure! T-Corp singularity affects the realm of light in addition to the realm of time. Cool, okay, so that means time, light, and color must all be related in some way, right? Great! What else do we get? Oh, that they can be selectively brought back to both objects, land, and living organisms like flowers? In fact, anything this fancy light touches gets housed up to Pride Rock by the color gods and given its rightful state of vibrancy. Anything else? No? You don't say! Well, I'm sure that's fine. Project Moon's been great about keeping their mechanics grounded when put under scrutiny. I'm sure the one setting they have that has the greatest amount of lore without having a full game dedicated to it was given that attention, and the answer is easy to solve with simple physics, right? How about I spend an hour researching how color, light, and time are related in the real world? What do you think would happen? clearly color and light are related. Color comes from the light frequencies that are reflected off of matter. That's neat. Are light frequencies related to time? Maybe going near the speed of light will affect what we see. Turns out that the closer you get to the speed of light, the more what's in front of you looks white and what's around it looks black, like a star in the sky. That's, the closest I've come to making sense of this. Maybe these other concepts, like say the Doppler effect, can be involved, causing people to experience time differently. Or maybe time is related to light in such a way that it causes the colors detecting cones and our eyes to shut off, allowing only the low light colorless rods to perceive it. Maybe there's something there. Or not. It's actually kind of strange that. An hour's passed and I don't really think I've made sense of this. Oh, sorry, wait, what's that on the clock? 3 hours have passed? I was supposed to have started the script today and tell my editor what she should be putting here.
Hi, Fred.
Well, any explanation I have relies on T-Corp making a whole bubble around the entire district that either puts the entire place at near light speed or only allows in low light frequencies, neither of which I can say make any lick of sense with the evidence we have, and I have standards for these theories! So I guess the only option left is to ask Reddit. Surely if I put effort into asking this question with the data at hand, they would have some way to help, right? No, what was I expecting? I could sooner lead a cat to swim down a waterfall than I could get a Redditor to avoid a chance at being smarmy and just give a relevant answer. And while there were some well-intentioned answers, please don't go harassing people, nobody deserves that, nothing made a single lick of sense. And that means that Project Moon might be holding its cards on T-Corp for some major reveal in a later season to say, I don't know, maybe there's a tiny frog inside of the T-Corp time box that loves eating colors, and whenever someone pays Herbert money, he beats the frog with a stick and says, no, not this one. Maybe the T-Corp color frog theory will be real. Or maybe T-Corp, just like the wing itself, is propped up by some nice ideas and cool concepts that were fleshed out just enough to entertain us for a few hours, but were never meant to be inspected with a fine comb. Because unlike every other aspect of Project Moon lore I've explored over the past 2 years, digging for more here isn't giving me more answers. And this one district has data spread across all 3 games. But we can't even be sure how old the time economy really is. The TT2 protocol was invented 11 years ago, so that means the TT4 protocol was made afterward. And if the TT4 protocol was made afterward, that means the ability to sync time is less than 11 years old. But then you've got Herbert talking about how people who grew up in T-Corp being used to this culture. Brother, what? You're the one who invented this place and said so outright, in canon. You don't look a day over 40, 50 tops. What, are we supposed to believe that you're immortal? Boy, howdy, do I know another wing that would have loved to hear about that. Or do you mean to say that this guy and this guy are under 40 or just forgot about a time before time being money? I'm sure you'd love for that to be a concept incinerator, wouldn't ya? While we're at it, what the fuck is driving in T-Corp? Time is clearly synced to both a person and their vehicle. I can understand a time-poor soul taking a while to fall from a building, but to have cars sync with time? Like, sure, letting people with limited response time drive a car moving at regular speed is a terrible idea. But isn't it also unsafe to let drivers of varying speeds be on the road at all at the same time? And where does the time influence end? It's not like the car's engine is moved by how fast the person does. If a 6-hour T-Corp citizen shoots a gun, does it move at a quarter of the speed? Hell, what speed were the Eurodivier members we were fighting at? Are we supposed to assume that they were at 24 hours as well? Or you know what? If I, a 96-hour bitch, grab a 4-hour hamster and shake it wildly onto a canvas, can I use it as a vomit paintbrush as the chunks slowly move like a viscous paste? Like, is it starting to sink in yet? Or do I have to give more hypotheticals to you and make my editor rapidly create more and more shoddy visuals to go along with it? None of this makes sense! What are we doing here? What are you getting out of this? Because despite there being a great core here, so much of T-Corp lore is held up by fun concepts and minutia instead of most other parts of Project Moon. Is this really what you want to see? Because if so, Screw it, I'll play. First, I'm curious about something, so how about you follow this rule on screen right now? But past that, if this colorless video that's mainly about accounting, bureaucracy, and sure as hell gonna get some armchair partisan politicians in the comments talking about how I'm misrepresenting a dangerous idea really is something you wanna see, then fuck it, get this video to 100K views before
November.
Do that. I'll make a video on Herbert, his history, and his plans, even if that relies more on theory than any other video so far. Or fuck it, maybe I'll just do it if 10 people sign up to my Patreon. Call that a deal too, because frankly, any person that goes over there is helping me to keep these videos coming out right now. That's been a genuine help to putting more effort into falling down this eternal abyss and dragging the rest of you down with me. Hell, maybe I'll make it anyway on my own time because that's legit a great emotional core of this setting. And I don't want to gatekeep an idea that actually is interesting. But after looking so much into what's in here, T-Corp, in every sense of the word, is a hollowing out of the soul. It's the most predatory city in fiction to both its citizens, its creator, and apparently to those that take an interest in it. At least it is until PM shows up and proves that there's some meat on these gears. Until then, I guess we've had Potential Man. Congratulations, now we've got Potential District. And look, there are some things that I just chose not to mention because I couldn't find a good place for them to fit in here, like the fucking sleeping chamber that Don Quixote talks about, but I haven't lost hope that I'm just missing something. So consider this me begging someone to come up with a convincing timeline and system for this color technology. Because while there was some real fun in exploring this rabbit hole and seeing just how broken this place really was, this tour is over. I'm gonna get back to thinking about syndicates, ego, distortions, all that stuff I'm sure you want a Jane Limbus video about. Until then though, here's the member and patron Q&A. Oh my god, it's been like 2 months since I finished that script. What questions could even be relevant now? Uncle Game asks, is the mom the wife of your dad, Frey? Honey, there's a reason I call myself a bastard bitch. It's bold to even assume marriage was a part of that conversation. Yeah, that was pretty short. Let's go for another. How many chicken nuggets do you want? I think I could take 100. I want to find out. How many could you take?